From radios? Just kidding.
Live from Sammy's basement.
So it's been an interesting week, and I think we're bringing on McCoy today.
Hi.
I'm Sophia,
I'm Sam.
and we might get a little snarky on the issues.
A little
Snarky.
bit.
Snark.
And if you've got any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat.
Yeah.
Or you want to share some of your experience with others as well, that's perfectly fine with us. So I think some of the issues we're going to talk about if we have time. Well, we want to talk about the transgender bathroom law, and again, but with a nice little spin on it about some events that have happened in the last week.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
We also want to talk about access to health care. How come we just can't seem to get access to health care, and specifically how it impacts the trans community. And then, I've done a little bit of studying, not a lot, but people are worried about inflation and, what are the causes of inflation, and, inquiring minds want to know. I want to know. I want to try to figure out what's going on, and is it, is there somebody in particular that's at fault, or is it just this is the way it's happening?
Right.
So, are there any other issues?
I think that's good for now, at least. I mean, we always end up talking and end up in this spiral of talking about something.
Right.
And so, I don't think we have anything specific this week besides that. We'll just end up where we end up.
All right. So why don't we get to the intro real quick, and we'll be back. Anybody following yet?
They can hear us during the intro.
Now you told me.
No viewers yet. There's a little thing up in that corner that tells you how many viewers you've got.
All right.
Right there.
They'll
All
catch
right.
on.
They'll show up eventually.
Yeah. Obviously, they're stealth viewing at this point.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure they'll come on and view us later. I'm just gonna double check that we're live on YouTube. So we're gonna.
Oh, that would be
YouTube.
good, because I'd like to make sure that we're being recorded for those
Sophia.
people that
Pause.
are arriving just a little bit late.
Did I spell your last name right? On the sofa.
Are we there yet?
There's last week's,
Oh, there we go.
and we're on the issues live too.
There we
Oh,
go.
sweet.
All right, so we're live. We're live.
I just gotta find out where the camera is that's picking me up.
Oh,
'cause
you're
I'm
right
like,
there.
Oh,
Right there,
there I
honey.
am,
There you
right
are.
there, because I was having this really weird direction on my face.
Looking all around.
You're
looking all around. I know. Ours is right here.
Yeah, no,
So
I
you
know.
can-
You're
you can
over
look
there.
over there.
I'm over here.
Yeah,
So now I can actually look at people
and talk to the camera
right,
instead of
until it talks back. And then we got a problem.
Yeah, if the camera
Oh,
starts
yeah.
talking back, we're gonna have issues.
But actually, aren't we kind of there with our smart devices? Look,
Yeah, kind of.
Like,
you don't
really?
have an Alexa here, right?
No, I do not.
No.
Okay, back at home, I'd have to say Axela,
Axela,
Yeah.
because otherwise it starts talking back to you.
Right. So there was.
We don't have an Alexa. We're very low key. We keep it very anti-AI in this house.
Okay, but when you need a break from anti-AI, you can just come over to my place. I have
for
smart devices all over the place.
Yep.
So, hey, I am incredibly proud of what I just read in the news this week.
Okay. All right.
So I saw in the headline reads from the Utah, actually it's in the New York Post.
Ooh, we made
We
the
made-
post.
We made the Post, and New York's actually international.
Nice.
And the Post reads this: Utah receives 4,000 hoax complaints after new restrictive transgender bathroom law.
Oh, that's good.
So my first thought was like, oh my gosh, people are really hating us out there. And then I thought this, as you go on to read, basically, the Utah auditor, John Dougal, right, who is responsible for investigating all these claims,
Right.
he was actually named as the person reporting the complaint, so he knew that there was something bad going on here.
Yeah, he knew they were fake.
So, I would just want to say kudos and thank you. This was totally unexpected from me because I was expecting the whole, the bathroom sit-in kind of thing to occur. I do want to make sure you're aware that civil disobedience does come with a potential price, right? You may actually be prosecuted, and just remember, if you're going to do something like this, that you know what the potential penalties are, and that you're ready for them, that you have somebody that's ready to bail you out if you get put into jail or whatever for this particular situation. I don't think, unless you have a really discriminatory employer, I don't think your employer would mind if you were one of those people, but just be careful, know your situation, know your environment. If you do run into extensive legal problems in this issue or some other form of protesting, reach out to organizations like the ACLU. If it is not, if it doesn't fit the criteria for a case that they would do, I'm actually the vice president of the ACLU for this year.
Right.
The organization has affiliate partners that we work with that can potentially help you get what you need. Speaking of which, if you feel that you have been harmed by the medical bill that prevents youth from getting transgender-related health care,
Or your child.
for your child, the ACLU is ready. They have a case ready to go, but what they need is a plaintiff. They need somebody who feels that they've actually been harmed by the law. Once they have that, if you are willing to put your name on the list, just make sure that if you're a youth, make sure your parents are there with you, right? Make sure they're willing to join you in that battle, or if you're a parent of a youth, that you're willing. Right, that your youth is okay with it, because we don't want to out people or, or put people into situations that they are really incredibly uncomfortable with. So it comes down to, if it's less comfortable, if it's more uncomfortable dealing with the lack of medical care than it is going to trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you do that which is less comfortable. Kind of what my therapist told me in my early, as I was getting ready to transition. She said, Sophie, it's been my experience that the point at which it becomes less comfortable, when it becomes more comfortable to transition than to not transition is usually when people transition.
Right.
So, it's not like people walk in and say, hey, I'm going to be a girl tomorrow, and it's done. It doesn't work that way. It means that they realize that their life will be easier to live if they go ahead and make the transition.
Right, and it's not something that's taken lightly, even when it is easy to do. I mean, so when I first transitioned, when I first began transitioning, it took me maybe 3 months before I started on testosterone, but it wasn't something that I just did. It was something that I thought about for, probably a year and a half before I even told anyone. And then once I started the process, it took me 3 months. But it was relatively easy, so to speak, compared to what youth face now. And it's still something that I wouldn't have taken lightly. And I'm not saying that because I was 22. It's a big deal to transition like that. My daughter is 12 years old, and she's transitioning, and she wants hormones. She wants hormone therapy. She's very upset that she hasn't gotten any. But she hasn't made any moves to want to do anything extra about it, which is why we haven't moved forward in trying to find someone to sue the government yet. Now, if that changes, if she starts getting worse about it, when she goes through puberty, I'm sure that will change. Because going through puberty the wrong way is difficult for people who are transgender, especially. You go through puberty and it hurts.
And it doesn't match what is on the inside.
And there is potential psychological harm that occurs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I know from my perspective, and I discovered this by Luann Brisendine's books about the male brain and the female brain.
Right.
But I had suffered. I didn't even know the word for it. I just had a kind of hypervigilance all the time. What I discovered later, after, and one therapist told me, it's like, well, okay, I see that you've got anxiety and potential, gender identity issues, right? But, it's the testosterone that was hitting my brain at an early age.
Right.
Because my brain had neither developed male nor developed female, because I had low testosterone throughout my early childhood. I mean, it's like one doctor said, it's close enough to normal. It's like, what does that mean?
What does normal mean anyway? But
Right.
okay.
When I was 19, my T level was actually at 135. I got it checked because I was having some issues. And my T level was at 135, which is 1 point too high to get treated for low T at that point, because it's considered a regular adult level. 135 is a regular female adult level. I was born male. Like, I'm AMAB, but, like, my testosterone never shot in normal for a male until after I actually stopped HRT.
Yeah.
It almost rebooted my system, and it's like, you're a dude.
Yeah.
So one of the things is like when she talks about the female brain, because I read that one first. So when she talks about Luann Brizendine, Dr. Brizendine talks about the female brain, they basically say that in studies when they go through perimenopause, right, and the body starts creating higher levels of testosterone in their bloodstream, then what happens is it triggers the fight, flight, hide part of the brain. It basically, it induces anxiety in the
So
brain.
it's like a cortisol.
Well, because normally
Sort of.
women's bodies, the only testosterone comes from their adrenal glands,
Yeah.
right? So now you're getting a flood of this signals to telling you, it's time. You need to hide. You need to be very aware of your surroundings. You go into
Hypervigilance.
hypervigilant state.
I'm sorry. I just realized that we've got just about the entire spectrum of transition here. So we've got someone who is female to male. Then we've got someone who is male to female. And then we've got someone who is detransitioner. Which... Retransitioner, as he prefers it. Which
I was male to female,
the entire
now
spectrum, almost.
Now I'm going female to male. I still have implants. I'm not on HRT anymore. And my system finally decided to be male.
The only way we could get one more in here is if we had someone who was the exact opposite of McCoy, who was
female to male,
female to male, and then
male
back.
to female.
FTF.
FTF, yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the FTM.
Yeah.
Or even we get confused on
Yeah,
this.
so if we had one more detransitioner who was started out like me and then detransitioned to female, then we'd have the full spectrum of trans voices in this room. And I think that's a really, really great thing to have, and something that a lot of people don't experience.
It's
They'll see, a lot of people will see just one side of it. They'll see MTF or they'll see FTM, or, and this is the worst part, they'll just see detransitioners who aren't like McCoy, who are angry.
Well, don't forget FTA and MTA. That's female to androgynous and male to androgynous.
You're right. We've got more seats at the table. We need more seats at the table.
So
There's so many.
I lived with chronic. I lived with chronic anxiety.
Right.
Right? And so then I realized, so once I finally learned that this is the wrong hormones on the brain, or the wrong, your body's generating one type of hormone and your brain's the other. They also discovered, and this is, and so when I started taking testosterone suppressants, my anxiety levels went down.
Mm-hmm.
I actually became less introverted. I became a switchvert, fluidvert, whatever.
Ambivert.
Right.
An ambivert.
An ambivert, right? I mean, of course, there's times when it's hard for me to stop talking now, and I blame that more on the estrogen level.
I don't have that high of an estrogen level anymore. I'm just super chatty, but I'm entirely extroverted.
And in case you're curious, and this is why so if somebody goes on a medical transition, they slowly, especially male to female, they slowly bring the estrogen in.
Right.
Because if you have a male brain that actually developed to male hormones, it can actually induce depression.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
That
women,
explains why I'm wired like a
so
lady.
basically, people that are born female-bodied, right, but have been generating too much testosterone, right, have their
PCOS,
brain
sort of thing.
masculinized, and then when they hit 8, 9, whenever they hit the change, they can start going into serious depression. So, if somebody in your family is suffering from a hormonally induced psychiatric condition, wouldn't you want them to get the blockers that stopped that
You'd
condition?
think.
That help with
You
that?
think.
Right?
You would
Absolutely.
imagine.
So again, if you have a trans child, right, or if you are a trans youth, right, that you're suffering from chronic anxiety or chronic depression because you can't get the treatment that you need, right, then you might consider contacting the ACLU of Utah. They might take your case.
Right.
If they don't take your case, they probably know somebody else that can help you out.
Right. And as you can see, McCoy and I, we tend to interrupt and Cam.
This is why I put little bookmarks in my
put
head.
bookmarks in your head because we have ADHD and it's currently untreated. So, which is a great way to lead into our next subject, but we haven't talked about the hoax enough, I feel like. I want to talk a little bit more about this hoax.
So, I mean, this is all. That's basically all I know is that I don't know if it was one person. It was probably some robo-generated. So see,
Yeah,
there
probably.
is a use for AI.
There is a use for AI. Generate hoaxes with AI. Yes.
We're not telling you.
I mean, no, I would never.
We're not
never
recommending that
recommend such-
behavior.
But if you do civil disobedience, make sure you've got, your
Your ducks in a row.
The one thing I did see about that was, well, I didn't see it, but I was told by one of the guys at the Legendarium D&D night that his class did a sit-in for the bathroom. And I've been hearing that kind of thing from youth across the country, or not across the country, across the state, that they're doing sit-ins from high schools and middle schools, because they just want their peers to be able to just use the bathroom.
So
They don't care. No one in the school. I mean, there are very few students, very few, that actually care.
So when we started going to some of these services that the Pride Center offered, right?
Right.
One of the rules that they said, if you ever need to take a bathroom break or whatever, the rule is you be you, right?
Go
And
wherever you're most comfortable at.
If you need to go, right?
Right.
But I take that as, we all, every one of us, whether you're trans or not, we have the right to be ourselves, to live our lives the way we know they can be, as long as they're not doing harm to other people.
Right.
Right.
And
Isn't that what life is about? Is
I
figuring out
think-
your authentic self?
at the end of the day, I think that we all just want to use the bathroom. Nobody's going in. None of the trans people are going into the bathroom with the intention of harming,
Committing lewd acts.
committing lewd acts. We're intending to use the bathroom.
That is the word I couldn't think of last week.
Lewd
Just
acts. That's right.
Right. And
So if the law were changed to be specific to only committing lewd acts,
Which is already against the law.
Which is already against the law. But if it were specific and it was just a lewd acts thing, then we wouldn't be up in arms.
So this becomes it's a magnifier law.
This is a law that is specific to transgender people, and that makes it discriminatory.
So
in my opinion.
my
Absolutely.
I like I said, if you need to be you, you be you. Right. I am not encouraging civil disobedience, but if you feel you need to do it, do it.
Right.
Otherwise, I can't pay the bills because I have to pay all the legal fees.
Yeah, we can't encourage these things because we can't afford the legal fees.
But yeah, so where did all these issues with getting healthcare access come from, right?
Right, I know. So access to healthcare can be a serious issue. I mean, so right now I'm going through some serious health problems, and my health insurance is it's all right. But what was worse was for about it's May already. For about 4 months, my daughter did not have health insurance. And the reason was because I went through the Obamacare website and I filled out all of the information and I said, we don't make very much money. Here's how much money we make. I want to buy health insurance. And they said, well, you can buy health insurance, but your daughter can't. Because your daughter is eligible for CHIP. Well, great. Give me a CHIP. No. You have to fill out this paperwork and this paperwork and this paperwork. Oh, look, you've been denied. Okay, well, can I buy health insurance? No, you're eligible for CHIP. Excuse me, but you denied me.
So loopholes in the system.
We fell into this little sliver, right?
And
eventually we got CHIP, but it took 4 months, and she didn't have health insurance for 4 months.
Oh, that's so dangerous.
Because of paperwork. It should be automatic.
So, this may not feel like a segue, but it is. So
it's a great segue, I'm sure.
So I just started reading for the Women's Democratic Club. Our book for this month is The Sum of Us by Heather McGee.
Okay.
The subtitle is What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. So now I'm only about 80 some odd pages into the book, but some of the things she describes very well is it correlates with a lot of other literature that I have read.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what has occurred over the years, so we had the New Deal. The New Deal was we're making the world a better place, we're making things a lot better.
Right.
And then in the 40s, Harry Truman says he wants to start integrating, right, into the military. Well, historically, because way back when, people got incredibly rich by murdering the people that lived here, finding excuses to do so,
right,
and also bringing other people over to basically enslave them, right, and steal their labor.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what they realized is all the wealth that they were getting, right, so they were making so much wealth that they didn't even do public schools in the South, because you didn't need to, you got your labor, you just bought your slaves, right? So
right.
What do you need public schools for?
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, there were even over the years in other states in the more northern industrialized states, they actually have free university. I remember growing up and hearing about some of these. If you lived in California, you got free tuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You could get a degree in California as long as you kept your grades up. But what happened over time is anytime they started saying, okay, well, we want to do these things that support the greater good. And if you look at government as that collection of decision makers and the apparatus necessary to make the better economic condition for the people that are living here. I mean, for the people that are living in that area that they supervise, right, that they can't do individually, right, then when they started making these particular decisions, you know, they, you know, well, some of the decisions, so they would do things like creating schools, right? Public schools. The in the 40s in the South, 40s and 50s, there was large, people realized they needed community, right? And they had swimming pools, large swimming pools, like all throughout. You don't see a lot of these swimming pools, these community swimming pools anymore. They're just starting to come back.
Right.
But they're like spread out. They're not as accessible as they used to be in the old days, way before I was born. But what was happening is basically when they started ordering desegregation, and people that were on non-white bodies were wanting equal space and equal time, or they wanted to basically swim with their friends,
Right.
right, and not be forced to separate times. You had communities that had this idea that people of color were lazy, right, or they were filled with germs or whatever, and you didn't want to mix them together,
Right.
you know, and this idea that you know, that they were still somehow inferior, even in their culture, if not in their body anymore. And so they decided they would rather just, when the court said that they, you know, that they had to integrate, they said, we're not integrating.
We'll just close.
We'll close the pools, and these pools got closed all over the place, right? So even though there were more white people
Right.
using the pools, the communities that were impacted most disproportionately were the black people. So there's an old saying, it's like cut off the nose to spite the face.
Right.
Right? You know, that, you know, because, you know, they didn't want, they were afraid that, as Heather puts it, it's a zero-sum game, and that if they give access to other people, they will lose out. Well, sure, they would lose out if you freed the slaves. They would lose their workers, right? But there are other people that realize economically, if you give everybody an opportunity, right, give
Right.
everybody the resources, get what they need, we could be way more productive as a society.
Give everyone the same chance.
Exactly. So then you go a little bit forward. You have the New Deal. You had trying to provide for Social Security for everybody, but you also had, when they started doing the GI Bill and the housing and all these other things, you still had people that said, okay, well, these lazy people don't deserve it, right?
Right.
So then you also had, they would do redlining. They would say, this, if you're black area, whatever, then they won't give them the loans
Right.
that they need. These really low loans that were less than renting, right? So they can only lease. And if you've ever been on a lease, you miss one payment and everything you put into it, even if it's the last payment,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
It's history. So you've got basically this kind of racist mentality, but it's no longer, it's a colorblind racism,
Right.
right?
We don't see color. We just see that you live in this black neighborhood, and therefore we're going to treat you like garbage.
And so, I mean, then you kind of, so we had, even back during the, so they tried to equate basically access to health care as basically pandering to the black people and being socialist, therefore communist,
Right.
way back in the 40s, right? And this would have been an affordable care plan. This would be national. All those countries that provide national health care, right, they have a better standard that are industrialized than us. They have a better standard of living than we do,
Right.
Like Canada.
right? They don't have as many people living in poverty, right? So,
Well, Canada has its own issues with their own
Yeah.
healthcare. And here's the thing. So each and every one of those countries, they have health insurance companies.
Yeah.
They're for private doctors.
Yeah.
you can
For when you go to see a private doctor. You can, however, get life-saving care for free, which is what I need. I
Right.
need that ability to go to the... Yesterday, I went to the urgent care. I really should have gone to the ER.
Right. But your preventative care is free. Your life-saving care is free.
Yeah.
Your elective procedures that are not necessarily medically necessary,
Those aren't free.
those are not going to be free.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
That's kind of one of the issues
so
that
what has
insurance is
happened
having
is
with
we've
me.
had this pushback of a minority in this country that have gotten the power. So she talks about how most even white people, right? Most poor white people, they truly want these services, but they will vote for people that won't
Who won't
provide,
do it.
who won't do it.
Right.
And so then we've been stuck in this quandary, right? This is part of what's made it so. This is why we have to pay tons of our paycheck every month to try to get the health care that we need. We still have the same argument of people saying, well, I don't want to pay for a trans person's health care. Well, I don't want to pay for your smoking issues, but I
Right.
do.
But I will. Yeah.
Right? You know, I will pay for your treatment because I know it's medically necessary.
Tit
Right.
for tat.
Right. So it's we've got this really gerrymandered, blocked up system, right, where people are voting against their own best interests, right,
In order to stop other people's.
because they
To
the
stop
whole,
other people's agendas.
well, because like they talked about the welfare queens, right,
Right.
which was a trope, right? But basically they basically tried to gut Social Security. They gutted a whole bunch of programs, and reduced the taxes on the wealthy. So tell me who's actually benefiting from all of this? It is not the
I would love to
It is
meet
not the
these
common folk.
so-called welfare queens because it is so hard
right.
to get on welfare. It's so hard to get on disability. Having somebody fake a disability and get on disability, that's wow.
Well,
good job.
and states still haven't expanded Medicaid, and in some states, at least according to in 2021,
Mhm.
you had to make less than $5,400 something a year to qualify for Medicaid. Oh, and also men didn't qualify unless they were disabled,
Uh-huh.
Wow.
and women didn't qualify unless they were pregnant.
Mhm.
Yes. So
and
there,
yet,
there.
the cost of private health insurance in 2020 is $4,000
Yeah.
a year. So you'd only have $1,000. Well, yeah, you'd have $1,000 some odd dollars left. If you make above that, then
You're cut off.
so why do we have those particular issues? We have the HMOs that are trying to make as much money as they can on health insurance.
Yeah.
I have a doctor who has succumbed to the HMO recently, and she tries to get as many patients as she can through because she's paid by the patient. In order to go that quickly, handle that many patients, they have to rely on diagnostic manuals or programs, and they don't have as much personal one-on-one time to get to know you as a person.
Right.
Yeah.
So over the last 10, 15 years, people have actually discovered that they're able to self-diagnose better
Right.
using Google.
Because at least you listen to your own
Yeah.
symptoms.
Right. They may be wrong sometimes, but at least
you're listening.
and you're not paying for expensive tests because they're going in the wrong direction.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm actually getting assessed right now to figure out if I'm an undiagnosed adult with autism. But it's like crazy difficult to get. And like some of the people that have known me longest, actually one of my friends that has known me probably longer than anyone, is actually a childhood trauma specialist. And she sent me what used to be an assessment it used to be part of the diagnostic program for autism. And I think the scale said that if you got over a 132 on the RAADS-R, there was like a 98% chance that you were on the spectrum at some point of the spectrum. I didn't score that. I actually got 171.
I got a 180.
And then on the next time I took it, I actually scored
I think, like, 190 is
173.
the highest you can get. I got a 180.
And
on
so I was like, nobody's ever tested me for this. This is interesting.
Yeah, and that's another thing that ends up happening is because there's so many people who, I don't know if this is necessarily the case for everyone, but for me it was, I grew up in a family that it wasn't my parents' fault that I knew how broke we were, but I knew how broke we were.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily want to say, hey, Mom and Dad, take me to go get tested for autism because I knew how broke we were.
Yeah.
I knew we couldn't afford that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I go do that when I knew we couldn't afford it?
Right.
Even if they had offered it, I would have been like, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Because I was doing well in school.
Right. So you're a high-functioning autistic.
I'm a high-functioning autistic person.
So is there a problem being a high...
There's no problem being high-functioning autistic, but the problem is that when you go most of your life without a diagnosis of autism, and you are autistic, it comes as a shock at a certain point. And eventually you realize that you're autistic, or maybe you have some other kind of neurological, not neurotypical brain.
Neurodivergence.
When you're neurodivergent, it makes a lot of sense retroactively. Your whole life kind of
At least
makes more sense.
understanding the way you think.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right, and this is
why
part of
you learn the way you learn.
Yeah.
Understanding how to learn better.
Yes.
Now, I did really well in school.
I did too. I tested
However,
well.
If I had the resources I have now, the knowledge of my neurodivergence, I could have excelled even more.
Mm-hmm.
I could have exceeded those expectations to the point where I could have gone to college when I was in middle school, because I was incredibly intelligent and I was able to do that kind of high cognitive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't able to do the work the same way as my fellow people.
Well, and so I think I would actually have to see the bell curve of what is considered, because I think we're narrowing it down a lot, just because I think there's a lot of people diagnosed. And this book is The Death of Public Schools is another book that I read. And so I am a fast learner. That was one of the things that I discovered.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so great at memorizing specific facts, but I can memorize processes.
Right.
Right.
Interesting.
But so I think part of our problem is we've diagnosed kids when we should be, one, basically making the class sizes smaller.
Yes.
Right, allowing for more attentive teaching and learning. Right.
Teaching kids the way
Right.
they need to be taught.
Having more counselors in the schools, so that if a child needs to learn a particular way, if you're I think they discovered a lot of ADHD kids are more hands-on.
Right.
They need to have their hands in it.
There's a
Right.
reason that my daughter goes to a Montessori school.
Right. And usually they're incredibly intelligent. So there are a number of people that I grew up around that were, extremely fast learners. They would fail because they didn't want to do the schoolwork anymore at all, ever.
Because they get bored.
Yeah.
They already knew it. Why do it? And I started to
Right.
fall into that for a while. So I made a D in physical science because I already know. You showed me this once already. I understand the rain cycle. Why do I want to keep doing all this work?
I had straight A's
Yeah.
until 8th grade. And then I got C's.
So what?
Because what I would do is I would do all the classwork just fine. I wouldn't do my homework, because why would I need to? I'd already freaking done it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why the repetition?
Why the
I already
repetition?
know this.
I've already done this. You've already graded me on it. I've already got 100%. You know that I know this. I can take the
So we really
tests
kind of
and
we
get
need.
A's.
And I'm not an education expert.
No.
Right.
But we
it
need
seems like
different
you
types of
should be able to
education.
take the test, and if the test indicates a high enough score, you just use that. If it doesn't, then you go back to the supplemental, because some people are just not good at tests.
Right.
And you go back to the supplemental work that they did to see if they were mastering the material.
But if you've got somebody who can go through and that can say, okay, well, this is what this is, and this is what this is, and this is what this is, and they do it on the first go.
So I mean, what
Why
I had to
are we
learn,
giving
what I
them
had to
all these
learn in my
homework?
high school years was discipline.
Yeah.
Right. For somebody who's a fast learner, discipline is, a little bit outside of where you want to go. Right.
One of the interesting
Patience.
things for
Oof.
me was one of the things that my teachers would always tell me was, well, this is how it's going to be in college. No, it's not. I had several college courses where I'd go up to my teachers and I'd say, listen, I learn a certain way and this is how I learn. And if you give me both tests and homework and essays and all of these things, I'm going to fail your class.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what your class is going to be like, tell me now and I'll drop your class. And I had a lot of teachers say, okay, yeah, that's what my test is going to be like. And I just drop their class. Take a different one. And then eventually I would get a teacher who would say, okay, well, my test is 100% tests. Or my class is 100% homework. Or my class is 100% lectures and the notes that you take.
Right.
Okay, great. So I only have to do one thing. One time. I don't have to repeat myself.
Well, so the thing is if you can if you get more teachers, right? If we pay them decently,
Pay our teachers.
so that they and you basically encourage them to bring teaching skills and learning skills back
Right.
to the classroom, and if
Sort
they're
of-
able to use them to enhance learning, give them a freaking raise,
Mm.
right?
Sort of
Right,
like
because they're
incentive for
investing-
innovation.
working
Yes.
together, right, incentivizes them to, pay for their outside education. Then if they're actually able to use it, then pay them more.
Because the goal
Yeah.
in school right now is to pound out as many students as they can. And that should not be the goal. The goal should be to teach the
Each
student.
individual.
Each individual student.
The
Yeah.
goal should be, what do you need to know to survive in today's
Your
world?
life.
Right,
Yeah.
and to be a productive citizen.
Educate them on taxes and how to first of all, what are they? Why do we have them? How do you pay them? Why do you pay them the way that you pay them?
My eighth grade math.
We
class,
didn't have that
My
kind of
eighth
thing.
grade math class. We did a checkbook, and we did a tax form.
Oh my gosh.
It was a
I
simple.
haven't-
It was just the main form, the 1040.
Now I got lucky and I was homeschooled for 4th and 5th grade.
Mm.
And my mom did a course on budgeting during that time. I rely more on that class than I do on any other math in my entire life. I took calculus,
Right.
but I rely on the 4th grade budgeting class that my mom came up with.
So let's
'Cause
talk
it's
about
applicable.
So
Maybe-
sex education.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't need to be absence only. That does not prepare them for life.
No, it's not going to prepare them
No.
for life. First of all, abstinence only prepares you for, if it was a plausible goal even, it only prepares you for high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't prepare you for college. It doesn't prepare you for what do you do when you get married.
What do you do when you get pregnant because you had sex and you know you shouldn't have had sex?
Yeah, what do you do then?
Right.
What do you do? What do you do if your friend comes out as saying that they don't feel comfortable, or you discover their gender presentation doesn't match their actual physical body?
Right.
What do you do?
What do you do then?
Right.
Or and this
Or
is
your friend has a crush on you,
For
but you're
the-
not necessarily into your friend. What do you do?
or even for the straight people, like for the straight cishet people in Utah specifically. I went to the most awkward bachelorette party of my life when my brother got married. Because his future wife, who is now my sister-in-law, had never had sex. No
Oof.
one else in her bachelorette party had ever had sex. I had a 3-month-old daughter. I was the only one there who'd ever had sex. So they're all like, okay, so now what do we do? And I'm like, I'm the youngest one there. I'm like, you guys are talking to me, right? Like, you want to know what a penis looks like? I don't know. Like, I don't want to, You're my sister. You're gonna be marrying my brother. I don't want to talk about this with you. I don't want to educate you on sex.
Mm-hmm.
That's awkward. You should have had this education in school. This is the kind of sex education that you should have had. You should know what you're doing on your wedding night.
The bachelorette party, the bachelor party go way back culturally.
Yeah.
To preparing them.
Yeah, and that's what ended up happening.
But basically,
it was that.
So it's preparing them to consummate.
Yeah.
The marriage.
And it ended up being one of those old-timey bachelorette parties where I explained how to have sex. Because she never had it. And then 3 months later, when my sister got married, guess who had to explain how to have sex to her sister?
You again!
Again, nobody else in the family or in the party had ever had sex except for me and the older sisters that were there. And so it was down to me.
So, I mean, probably the best decision you can make is to not have procreative sex.
Absolutely.
Or insertion
sex. That's
sex.
the best decision.
That is the best decision you can make, but you need to know what to do.
What are
if
right
you
choices?
decide
what are the
to
possible
experiment
choices?
to go outside of it, right? You need to know
and
how to.
On your wedding night, if you have done the right thing and you have stayed abstinent, and your spouse has stayed abstinent, how do you have sex with them? If neither of you have had sex and you don't know what you're doing.
Well, it's interesting because it turns out the whole missionary position was invented by ecclesiastical organizations to make sure people did not enjoy having sex.
Because it's not enjoyable.
Oh my gosh.
For the woman, she's not stimulating that area, right?
Yeah.
It's like you want to be fully clothed so you can't see anything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? So,
So, yeah, absolutely. I think that some form of sex education needs to be had besides just abstinence, and it does need to be had. Obviously, now, if we're talking sex education in middle school...
I mean, you don't have to play pornos in the classroom.
Yeah, that should be abstinence.
You don't have to talk about BDSM or any of this other stuff.
There should also be, here's what do you do if you stop having your period.
Yeah.
Well, first you should check to make sure that you're not pregnant.
Right.
Next, you should check to make sure that there's not anything else going on. Are you stressed? Are you eating right? Is there something hormonally wrong with you? You need to see a doctor if it lasts longer than 3 months.
Here's what they should also be teaching. They should also be teaching, okay, this is how you express consent, right? Or how you say no. And, to both of them.
To both sides, yes.
And also explain to them what you can expect if you don't accept somebody saying no, and what you can do if somebody doesn't
respect your consent. Yeah. What are your options? And to give them this, I will say when I did my sex education in Utah, there was a video on date rape. There was a video on date rape.
Yeah.
It was a horrible, terrible video.
So this is like the old crash
it was
video
like
from Driver's Ed.
Yeah, I mean it was awful, and it didn't do anything.
Hey, we're going to prom night
because date rape is not at all like regular rape.
Yeah.
Okay, when you're talking date rape versus what people think of in back alley rapes. We're not talking somebody screaming, no, 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 no. We're talking somebody saying, no, I really don't want to do that. And then being too scared to say no again.
Or being pressured. Yeah. Yep.
Or being pressured. Or being pushed into it or a million different things. There's a million different ways that you can be date raped. And when it happened to me, I didn't know that I'd been raped. Because I was told by my bishop that it was my fault. So, and I explained everything that I did to him. And I explained everything that happened to him. He didn't know any better either, I'm sure. Because if he had known any better, I don't think he would have said, well, you shouldn't have gone to that boy's house.
Mm-hmm.
Because he just didn't know any better because that's the way he was raised. Oh, well, you went to the boy's house, it's your fault. No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's not like that's terrible victim shaming.
It's terrible victim shaming. but
People
that's
aren't
what
raped
he
because they
was-
go to somebody's house. They aren't
that's
raped
what he
because of the
was
clothes
taught.
they wear. Rape is all about power.
Absolutely. And so
And
I think
insecurity.
that kind of thing where you need to learn the difference of consent, absolutely. That needs to be taught, not just in sex education, just in general.
So when I was taken advantage of, of course, that was probably more or less a date rape situation that occurred that night. But now that you put it in that case, there was two men.
Right.
Right. And in fact, probably date rape from the beginning is like, so he would help me move my stuff, but he wanted sex.
Yeah.
Right.
Automatic date rape.
Right. And because I had consented to that, when he violated me in other ways with his finger up my rectum and his fingernail, right, after wanting me to give him the nastiest rim job, is like, by the time, and I had the rape kit and everything done, and for somebody who was just early transitioning, maybe a year and a half into it, this is awkward, right?
Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
I had not legally changed my name yet,
and that makes it so much worse.
right?
Yeah.
And, but they still treated me as female
Good.
at that point. Not like I had functioning equipment, anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
But still.
I had budding breasts,
Yeah.
But they treated me because I was treated as a female, right?
Yeah.
I was raped as a female, and they used my chosen name, but so basically, advice was called the police. I called the police. They got me in touch with that. Filed my report. They filed the report, and without even looking at the rape kit, because I had consented once.
That doesn't matter.
In their mind, it was automatic consent.
Oh no.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can withdraw consent at any point. Let me say this to the camera. You can withdraw consent at any point, and if they do not stop, it becomes rape. And I need every single little boy and girl on this to hear this. If you do not stop, it becomes rape.
What about implied consent?
Doesn't matter.
Because, that confused me a couple of months ago.
Implied consent does not matter. You need to hear the words, yes, I would like to have sex with you. Otherwise, it's rape. That's end all, be all, period. Period. That's period. Otherwise, no. Now, if somebody says no, stop, or if somebody withdraws their consent and says, you know what, I don't feel comfortable anymore, can we stop? Can we take a pause? Hold on a second. Whoa. Anything like that, it immediately becomes rape if you don't stop.
And it doesn't matter what their eyes say.
Yeah.
If the
their
word
eyes
no
said-
if it comes out of their mouth no, you can't sit there and say, well, your eyes said yes.
Yeah, their eyes said yes. Their actions said, I don't care what their actions say. If their words say no, then that means no. And if their actions say no, and their words say yes, then that means no. If there's
Or
any no,
If somebody says, I'm very uncomfortable with this,
that means no.
that means no. Right? It doesn't mean, well, maybe if I rub your feet or do
Yeah,
something to make
no.
you feel better.
Oh.
Because at that point, you're going into date rape.
Exactly. You're going into, well, if I convince them enough. No, you don't, if you have to convince
Peer
somebody
pressure
to have
is
sex
still
with
peer
you,
pressure, and
then
it's
you're
still
doing
bad.
It wrong.
Ask Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. Yeah. No
right,
kidding.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I get really fired up about date rape, especially in consent, because the guy that raped me, I'm sure he still to this day doesn't think he raped me, despite the fact that he threw me on the ground and forced me. I'm sure to this day he doesn't think that he did anything wrong, because I went over to his house. I was okay with making out with him.
Also, if somebody doesn't say, I like it rough.
yeah. If somebody doesn't say I like it rough, and you have to throw them on the ground, that makes it rape.
It's rape. Also, if somebody likes it rough, there's this thing called a safe word, and you need to
have
and
one.
you actually need to sit down and have the conversation
prior to
this
anything
about
happening.
what's acceptable,
Yeah.
what's not acceptable.
Yeah, preferably with both of you sitting separately, like as far apart as
Right.
Sophia and I are,
and
and fully clothed.
and it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, there are dominant submissive relationships, but dominants have limits too.
Absolutely.
Some dominants you say, "Well, I want you to cut me here," and it goes like, "No,
no, I don't want to do that."
Right.
And that's, again, that's a no. That's a safe word.
Or
We're
say,
done.
"I want you to slap me," and they say, "No, I don't want to slap you. I don't believe in slapping people."
Yeah.
Right. So. It goes both ways. People have limits. We need to recognize their limits. We need to establish boundaries. It is good in your life to establish those boundaries, not just in your intimate relationships, but in your personal relationships.
Absolutely. We actually have, in this house, we have a safe word. We use our safe word whenever we need to, emotionally, to back off. So sometimes I get really, really frustrated with my kids, and I just need a minute to myself. And I'll tell them that. I need a minute. And they know that if I use that phrasing, it means I'm not angry with you. I just am having my own issues.
A little bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, I need a minute. Not you. It's not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. It's not you problem. It's a me problem. I need to step away. And so that helps us a lot in our personal lives, in our emotional lives, and that's our little safe word for me. And we each have our own little words that we use that says, okay, back off now. Serenity does it with Sabrina, and Sabrina does it with Serenity, and we have those things so that we have our interpersonal relationships because there's so many of us in the house.
Don't suffer.
Yeah, we don't want our relationships to suffer.
Yeah.
So, and we actually sat down and we had that conversation over dinner. The 5 of us. I had to count how many people are living in my house. There's me, and there's my daughter Serenity, and then there's Sabrina and her mom's Jeanette, and then there's Mussy, who also lives here sometimes. And so the 5 of us sat down and we said, okay, here are the things we don't like. Here are the things that we are okay with, but we prefer not to have them happen all the time. And here are our safe words. Here are our phrases that we'll say when we need a minute. And we had that nice long conversation. And it really helped us out.
But I would say anybody, if we've triggered an interest into exploring this particular topic,
Yeah.
there are organizations out there that will teach you the safe way
Yes.
to do it. Please don't try to do it on your own
Yeah.
and creatively. There are organizations out there. I'm not going to mention them, but you're smart enough, you'll find them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking for almost an hour now, and we haven't even touched on inflation.
Right. Well, but first, McCoy,
Yes.
for those people that can't see your t-shirt, what does that say? Can you describe your t-shirt to us, please?
Says, fuck transphobia.
I wholeheartedly approve this message.
So do I.
I literally, if
fine.
I can say anything about transphobia causes situations like mine.
Yeah.
I had no education about anything to do with transitioning. And I also had some trauma in my past and whatever that had not been dealt with and stuff that kind of led to me being like 22 and I'm like, okay, I don't like being a dude because of whatever trauma I've been through. And so I started transitioning, not really knowing how it was going to affect me fully because there was no education. None.
If we get rid of transphobia, we can get rid of...
We can reduce the number of transitions that occur.
Of issues that occur.
Yeah.
Right.
And we can make it so that people are given the opportunity to explore their gender in a safe, consensual way where people can say, okay, well, I'm not really comfortable being a dude. And the doctors can say, okay, well, why don't you just dress like a woman for a little while and see how that feels?
I had a sexologist therapist. I mean, that's kind of where she put me down the cross-dressing path first.
Yeah. Cross-dress for a little while, see how that feels. see if that helps, or try this and see if that helps. Have everyone in your family call you she, her.
Right. And so
And if we get rid of transphobia and that is allowed, and you're allowed to play with your gender, then if you'd been allowed to play with your gender, you would have found out a lot earlier, before you'd had surgery, before you started medically transitioning.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not quite fully a woman. I'm a man with feminine tendencies.
I have so many effeminate traits, like so many. I mean, I don't know if any of you have noticed. I have pink hair. And it is so funny because I will literally, people will walk up to me.
Your sides.
I did.
Just
People will walk up to me in public, and I am effeminate and comfortable enough with who I am as a person that I don't hide it. How great would that be to not have to hide your true self for everyone?
I think that'd be awesome.
Well, so what was interesting for me was when I discovered in my 40s that here I had thought I had navigated myself into I'm living to being a man, a nice man, a tender man, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when I looked on Imvu and the way I was talking in my bubbles, and even though I was doing it as a female character, and started realizing I'm actually expressing feminine, right? I'm not consciously expressing feminine. I am subconsciously expressing feminine because I'm. So basically, and then I discovered if I stopped all these, stop preventing myself from things that I did that were feminine,
right,
it became even more
unconsciously
natural.
I'm just doing this because that's who I am.
Right. I don't even think about my gender necessarily, but people look at me, it's like, well, that's, God, she's a girl. Look at her. She's talking with her hands. She's a girl.
Yeah.
Oh, I've always said that's because I'm like an Italian. But no.
I can't lean on that.
I'm not Italian. That's the funny thing is that there's 0% Italian in my genes.
You're talking about a eureka moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, holy cow.
My eureka moment was waking up one night and realizing that I dream from the perspective of a man. Always. I have always dreamt from the perspective of a man.
What is that like?
Well, it's just that, like, I would be having these dreams and I'd realize that I'm the man in them.
Oh.
Every dream that I had, I was always the man. I was the man in the dreams. And that was my eureka. Oh my gosh. I think I might be trans. And it took me a long time from that point until I actually transitioned. But that was my, oh, okay. I'm a man.
So we're about to run out of time. So we did promise we would talk about inflation.
We did say we'd
so,
talk about inflation.
people are asking us, like, where the heck is this inflation coming from? It's like our companies being just greedy. What's going on here? And, we even had somebody who was running for Congress who said, oh, yeah, it's because companies are greedy. Yes, that's what the problem is. Like, I'm very wary of simplified answers.
Yeah, it's not just one reason.
To issues, right? Because if it was a simple answer, you would be able to point the finger and say, this is the greedy corporation. So I did a little bit of research. Google is my friend, right? I went to kind of a reliable source that wasn't too red, and I mean that in the Republican sense. Mm-hmm. And basically, so inflation comes from a couple of directions. One is in the case that you've got more demand than you have product available, right?
Supply.
And there's ways. Yeah, there's demand exceeds supply, right? And another case
kind of like with the toilet paper thing at the beginning of the pandemic.
Right. Well, you've also got cost, right? Cost. Mm-hmm. If costs go up, and there's factors that cause the cost to go up, that can also cause inflation because if you don't raise your prices, you go out of business. Now to say
money.
That, and then I discovered a key one in here is the cost of housing, right? As the cost of housing increases, that is a prime contributor to inflation. Now, usually you have it's a balancing factor between employment and inflation.
Right.
So the more people that are employed, right? So your unemployment goes down. The more people that are now employed, if they're making enough money, right? They suddenly start having money to buy the things that they need or that they want. So now if you have a surge in employment, that surge in employment translates into a run on goods and services.
Right.
Right. So that we definitely are at a very low unemployment. It's incredible how low the unemployment is right now.
Right. It's the lowest it's been in,
It's the
50
lowest-
years or something like that?
Right. And and sometimes you sometimes wind up with a few cycles, an inward spiral of having to raise prices to match the raise in salaries and wages, as long as you're continuing to do that. Now, companies will not want to raise the wages to try to keep the costs, but that just puts us back into situations where life is unaffordable.
Right.
So you have inflation that occurs because people are not working. Back in 2000, in the 90s and 2000s, they had people that were taking advantage of other people because they could, and this is where the greed comes into play, and what they called subprime mortgages. Now, this meant, and I got that from this book here, by the way. So the subprime mortgages, now that I understand what they are, so that you have the prime rate, right? And the prime rate says if you have really excellent credit, you can borrow at this low a rate to get a home or whatever.
Right.
Subprime means is basically meant for people that wouldn't qualify for that rate, but they'll bring them in at a slightly higher level.
Right. So it's like, I have terrible credit, so my car insurance or my car
Payment
loan is at a higher APR than somebody who has good credit.
Right. So what happened is you had some of these banks like Wells Fargo, right, start pushing their account managers to bring people in at subprime because they got kickbacks. So people that would otherwise qualify, and this was white people, black people, a lot of it was, and they'd get a lot of messages about refinance your home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's one story in here of a woman who had her house paid off, right? She went and she borrowed the money against the house, basically refinanced the house to put her kids in parochial school. She had qualified for the prime rate, but they didn't tell her that. They put her into the subprime rate, right? And then said, okay, well, yeah, we can renegotiate and look at this, in a few years or whatever down the line.
Right.
Fortunately, she became part of a class action suit later down the line that saved her home and thousands of other people's homes.
Good.
Right. To say that people don't, so when they say, if they try to say, the people that they tried to say that these were people that were borrowing that really couldn't afford the house. Yes, they could.
Yeah. It wasn't just people who couldn't afford the house.
They were being given like 20 or 30, they were having to pay like double
right.
for the house. Right. Because somebody wanted to make a lot of money off of them. So now we have, so then that market collapsed because not only did they do that, they basically started wrapping them up as financial instruments. And then they would resell the loans, and then they would wind up becoming financial instruments, right?
Right.
And so eventually, all of a sudden, the housing market collapsed, and there was more money owed on these loans than the actual houses were worth. People could not get out of the houses. So
Yeah.
right. Eventually, they did. They got out of them, but you have a lot more people out of housing, right? Some people in their 60s now, right? And so you've got a demand on housing that's still there.
Right.
Same time, you have they're still creating freeways and highways. They're knocking down homes, which does not help with the housing shortage and crisis. So you add that in, the cash flux. Also, they discovered if you have more money that gets generated that floods the market, it means the value of the dollar drops.
Yeah.
Which causes inflation because you got to raise the cost of the goods to match the dollar.
Yeah.
So, Why are we seeing a lot of inflation? Housing, right? We're still recovering from the housing crash, right?
Right.
We also have wars overseas, which means that the oil reserves are tied up for potentially being used for overseas, right? It doesn't really have to do with Biden saying that we're not going to be basically the switch over to green. The actual switch over to green would have the opposite effect, right? Because then there'd be more supply than demand,
Right.
Yeah.
right? And then the prices would naturally have to drop on fuel.
Yeah.
So you have the war that's going on. So these are the factors you had. When COVID hit, it basically disrupted our supply chains.
Yeah.
Here's another place where greed comes into play. You had drivers that were not being paid what they needed to survive, that were out there transporting.
Yeah.
So you have like Yellow Freight, which was a huge
YRC.
trucking,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when they basically
Didn't
went out of
Cupco go
business,
under too?
now you've basically slowed products to market, which means there's less supply
Right.
than the demand.
Right.
So you've got climate crisis that's occurring, which means
Yeah.
that the crops are the crops that people want. They want especially the fresh fruit, the vegetables, stuff like that.
And they'd rather have those just rot on the vine than have somebody get them for free than doesn't pay for them. Or get them for
But
cheap.
they have to raise the cost because they're not
selling as much.
and they're not living as long, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
of what's happening.
Yeah.
So my theory on the reason that we have the inflation is, yes, there's a couple of places of greed, but those are not the main factors, right? The main
No,
factors
there's so many
are
factors
what
out
we've set
there.
ourselves up for. It's yes, okay.
It's
You had a
supply
couple.
and
You got
demand, it's-
bad players.
Yeah.
You can blame part of it on Putin,
Sure.
right? You know, and the Israelis and Hamas for getting that war going over there,
Yeah, thanks for that. That's great.
right?
Not that it was ever going to be anything but a war there.
Right.
And again, there's a million different reasons for inflation, and the only thing we can do, what can we do to help the inflation is
Right. Well, and remember
slowly raise our wages to match
President
the cost
Trump
of living.
flooded with the
Yeah, 'cause
Oh,
we
the
don't wanna-
stimulus.
we don't want
checks.
to flood the market. What we want
Right.
to do is we want to slowly raise our wages,
get our wages up.
get our wages to the point where they match the cost of living, but do
Yeah.
it slowly so that they don't raise prices.
Let's
at the same time.
address the healthcare costs, right? One of the things that we can do is I can't remember the name of it. It's like something about it's Common Sense Utah.
Mhm.
They are basically pushing a petition, right, for the legislature to create a statewide health insurance platform,
That'd be
nonprofit,
great.
right?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
It wouldn't get rid of privatized medical
No, it
medical
would
care
just
for those people that
be
want it.
universal health care.
Universal health care for the state of Utah.
That would
So
be
that's
fantastic.
another step that we can make going forward.
Then there's also universal basic income,
right.
which again, it's not getting rid of jobs. It's not saying you can't make wages on top of that. It's just saying here's a basic income that covers your food and your housing.
You know,
The
getting
absolute
education, getting
necessities.
free education would
Free
help,
education would help.
right? Because what they invest, so basically part of it is people are spending 30, 40 years trying to
Paying
pay
off
back a student
education.
loan,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or basically going into legal issues with them,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? Losing their house, losing everything because of a student loan.
So
Yeah.
the issues I think that we're having here is that we are paying a lot of money for things that don't actually exist. We're paying a lot of interest.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things.
We're paying the
that don't-
bankers.
We're paying bankers a lot of money, and when you're paying more interest than you're paying for actual product, that's when you get a lot of inflation.
You need to regulate the lenders, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that they basically one of the things, I don't know if the law is in place yet, but we need a law. We need a law that says if somebody qualifies for prime, they get prime.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and
So that we don't ever go down that path again, right?
right, and just another thing to add to the list of little things that we can do, tiny adjustments, because we don't want to make these massive. Well, you get $5,000 and you get $5,000 because that's not going to fix
that
it.
will cause
That's just
inflation
gonna
to kick
flood
off
the
again.
market.
Right. We
Yeah.
want small adjustments that will help us in big ways down the road.
Right.
We want small adjustments.
Universal
Things-
services goes a lot farther than just throwing cash out.
Right.
Yeah.
Services help us a lot. Taking things that you spend money on and making it so that you don't have to spend money on them anymore is more helpful than giving money out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the point we're coming to, I think.
Right. And there was a number of people that took some of those paychecks and they didn't need them.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean there were
The
were a bunch of
paycheck
people that
Paycheck
didn't need
Protection Program.
Yeah.
There were organizations that took it. My church, I go to South Valley Unitarian, right? And the prior president was upset that we didn't take it. He said, yes, we did need it because we're on a deficit budget. We didn't need it.
Yeah.
Right. The decision was made before I became the president of the church at the time. But we didn't need it because we had reserves.
Right.
And we could lean into the reserves and save it for those people
Who really needed
Who
it.
that
needed
do not
it,
have
yeah.
reserves.
Right. Well, I think we've touched each of our topics. Next week we're gonna do the same place, same time.
Yeah, this sounds great. I think this is an interesting area to do it. So I love this. I just got to get used to the 30-minute commute down here.
We're switching to my place because Sophia has better timing on arriving on time than I do, and she's less likely to forget that this exists. So
Not
if
guaranteed.
If she shows up at my house and I'm in my pajamas, at least we'll still have a show.
So,
Isn't that the truth, though?
Yes.
all right, we're going to be here again next week, 6 p.m. on
6
Tuesday,
p.m. on
the
Tuesday the
12th?
I don't know.
Oh,
What is
Friday
today?
is the 10th.
Oh,
So it would
Tuesday the
be-
14th.
Yeah.
Tuesday
Yeah,
the
Tuesday
14th.
the 14th.
So,
All right.
I'm excited. So, again, tell your, as you learn these issues, talk about them with your friends, your family, your parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Share what you're learning. Read good books.
Read